There is no expertise, in this. There's only like a desire to play and to explore. I think part of the fun for me is not knowing. I try to enjoy myself.
Good morning and welcome everybody to our Saturday Stories, our virtual program from the Society of Illustrators. We are so delighted this morning to have Cátia Chien, our Gold Medal winner for the original art show Best in Picture Books 2025, written by award-winning author Matthew Burgess. This is their second collaboration. They actually won a gold medal for The Bear and the Moon. Cátia is joining us from her studio in Los Angeles. She's fairly recently moved out to California. And so Cátia is Taiwanese heritage, but born in Sao Paulo in Brazil, where she grew up, and then moved to the United States and lived in New York for quite some time, which is why we were able to have her come and collaborate on many of our programming at the Society of Illustrators. And she actually went to art school in Pasadena called the Art Center of Design, Art and Design. It's an incredible school. She's really known as an intuitive artist because, as you'll note, all her books have her own vision for each story. She gets the manuscript from an author and then she creates the story with the images using materials that guide her. Basically, what we're going to find out this morning is how Cátia got started in illustration, her passion for drawing, and inspiring us all with her stunning illustrations. And then we'll do our lovely workshop. So hope you have your art materials ready. Cátia had suggested some darker colored paper if you have it, and then some crayons or pastels, anything you'd like to draw with, even if you have paints. So let's get started. It's a pleasure to have you, Cátia. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Claire. Thank you so much for that amazing introduction. That's quite comprehensive. I wanted to share with everybody the scope of my work so far and show them some images and just talk a little bit about my journey, but it won't be too extensive because what we're here to do is really draw together. As Claire mentioned, I've done a few books and been working in the industry, in the kidlit industry for 10 plus years. Each book is a little bit different and I approach it differently, but they all somehow feel cohesive to my work, and I'm glad for that. The Town of Turtle was the first shift into multimedia, and after that, I just kept going with it, kept incorporating more mixed media. So when I graduated from Art Center College of Design, I was working in working to try to get my work in gallery shows. I was always drawn to storytelling, but I knew I wanted to also be a visual development artist. So when I graduated, I did some work for gallery shows, and then I also got a job at Nickelodeon. It was around that time when I first got my first manuscript. An editor from Houghton Mifflin, um, named Kate O'Sullivan, who actually is the editor on Fireworks. She was my first editor, and she gave me a manuscript out of the blue. I think she saw my website, and then she sent me The Sea Serpent and Me. That was my first book. That's how I got started in children's books. But I was still working at Nickelodeon and I was still working on galleries. And then I also started to do some visual development work for films, some of which didn't get made and some of which did. I did some character design, some concept work for Wish Dragon. And you can see that the technique for these is very different than my picture book work because all the work that I do for visual development is on the computer. It's really about idea generation and less about the final image. Digital, I think, is the best medium for that because it's so quick. But I will sometimes sketch in pencil because I still love sketching pencil. It's pretty quick. That's a little bit about me and my journey here to doing children's book mostly and VidSev. What I want to do now with you all is I want to have us set up our drawing tools and I'm gonna read from fireworks. But I want us to just have our things ready because right after I read, I'm gonna jump right into the drawing portion of it. So I'm gonna show you all a little bit of the tools that I'm gonna be using, but you can use any tools you want. I have a black marker, um, a pencil, like a blue pencil. I've got some of these neat little solid tempera paint sticks. And again, you don't have to have any of these, but you might. I just wanted to kind of bring together tools that are easy to find around the house, like pencil and eraser. And so I'm also going to be using white pencil, color pencil, X-Acto knife, scissors. I'm using some scratch board as well, um, black paper, and then this is graphite powder. And these are just little sponges that I'm going to use to apply it. So going to the drawing portion of that. We're going to start with just having a pen and a color pencil because I like starting it simple and we can kind of go from there. These are some of the images we're going to be, that I created for fireworks using the tools that I'm showing you. These are just exploration sketches that I did prior to doing the finals. And so the way I'm going to draw with you right now is sort of the way that I work behind the scenes anyway. So just taking a sheet of paper and I'm gonna go like this. So I can do a bunch of different kinds of fireworks. And I want you to be really loose with it. It can be any shape you want. So I like to just kind of play with bold shapes when I'm using a pen. So I'm just gonna play a little bit. Maybe the idea of like a rainbow, you know, and the whole point, and maybe make the lines a little bit wiggly so it looks like it's kind of exploding a little bit. Maybe I'll tap it so that it looks like it's kind of flaring out a little bit and making some shapes. And one of the things that I really wanted to make sure I did for this book when designing the fireworks is to be really bold with my shapes, um, so that it it made an impact. So whatever shape you do, one of the things to make sure of is to make sure you have that flare of light shooting up into the sky. There is no expertise, in this. There's only like a desire to play and to explore, take time to be frustrated sometimes and to know that you'll find your way. Because I think part of the fun for me is not knowing. So actually, expertise is not really part of it. I think it's more that the material is fun to play with and shapes are fun to play with. And there's like a calling, a curiosity to what that can become. I get a lot of freedom to begin with. When I first sketch out the story, pretty much is it's a blue sky at that point, and I don't typically have that many notes in the beginning, if any. I think, the job of the artist is really to not only commit it to making the best work they can, but also give a good case for the work, for the visual narrative that you're telling, the visual child that you're creating. Often, at least like I kind of suffer from wanting to please others and wanting to make sure that everyone feels satisfied with, the image. And I think that that can kind of interrupt the creative process. So I think it's actually quite important. And over the years, I have made it a point to really protect that. So often, like my sketches are just little chicken scratch, because I'm trying to figure out as I go, and I'm also trying to make sure that I have room to play. I want it to kind of be more of a developing work as we go. So that means that initially it's really more about the story and the pacing of the book, and then later it's more about the images. Then eventually you get feedback and then the notes, and it just goes, it's a little bit of a back and forth.
Katia is an expert in experimenting with, how to make each page sing on its own.
I really encourage people to not be intimidated by the actual materials themselves. And that's why we're using a lot of different materials today because I feel like what can happen is people can feel paralyzed by the material that they're using and wanting to make sure that they're creating something really good with it. But I really encourage that as because I do think that that's actually part of the process of finding something that does work, that is innovative, that's really fun and fresh. So for this image here, for the big finale image, this part right here, I use a masking technique for this, um, which was quite fun to do. And I'm going to show you all what the mask looked like. So I designed a little kaboom kind of visual for that. That's what this is right here. And then I cut it out using the X-Acto knife right here. And then I placed it on the illustration board, and I used a like shavings of pastel to kind of rub off the color. So then you have the negative that's masked. So what I'm doing right now is just using color pencil to kind of to color in between the fireworks and leaving a little bit of white in between the color pencil and the black to kind of showcase a little bit of the luminosity of it shooting in the sky. And so it just depends on the way that you like to work. And you can experiment with both ways and see what kind of shapes, you come up with. For fireworks, I really wanted to celebrate the sense of freedom and the sense that kids have to fully be in the present moment where they can fully be with things that are joyful and in the way that sometimes it's hard for adults to. The creative intent was about trying to find ways to capture that dynamic sense of freedom. That meant creating kids that had a lot of movement in them, and also the way that they dress was actually a pretty conscious decision too, because um, I just remember as a kid really not being very fussy about the way I dress, and the adults around me were really, pretty. They were pretty conscious about, what I was wearing. Like my mom really wanted me to wear dresses, and I just wasn't like a dress kind of girl. I was a bit of a tomboy. I just remember how much my mom worried about presentation and about, you know, whether I was messy or not, if I went out and had mud on any of my clothes or, so it was very intentional, for me to create these kids that were just wearing white t-shirts and shorts, ready to play, not fussy, not trying to proper in any way, much like the freedom that I think kids have until they're imposed on. I'm using Scratchboard, and it's really fun. It's actually quite perfect for fireworks because you're just scratching away at the light. There's nothing extraordinary about creating using different materials, right? And the way that I'm approaching it is not anything special. It's just um, it's just that sometimes I think we can feel like we need to be an authority at something in order to use it, and that isn't actually, always the case. I think just attempting to do it is sort of the beginning of understanding how you work on it. You can also use like for scratchboard, you can also use like a wooden stylus or even like a sharp pencil. You can actually cut into it depending on what kind of scratchboard you're using. Right now, I'm kind of designing a little bit of the the kind of fireworks that sort of opens up and then cascades down. And you can design that yourself. Like think about it as like an umbrella of light, little pieces of shapes falling from it. If you don't have scratchboard with you, but you lay down like a lighter color and then a darker color on top of that. And very quickly, you want to work quickly before it dries. And then you take something sharp like a pencil or like an X-Acto and you can start carving out the light against the dark with that too. I heard before that it wasn't encouraged, mainly because it was the idea is that they're protecting either creators because they're trying to make sure that the artists can have freedom to kind of explore whatever direction they want to explore without feeling the need to please the original text, and they just want to kind of protect the creative process. But that's not necessary in every case, right? So I think it's how the industry is established just as a default, but there are plenty of situations that I know where the author and the illustrator work really closely in terms of communication. It's not that the author tells the artist what to do or even has that much input in what they actually create, but it's just that they're communicating and it's a back and forth that is done with a lot of respect and space. And it becomes a really joyous journey together because as an illustrator, we all know that we end up spending so many hours by ourselves if we work alone, in the studio working on a book that doesn't get seen until like a year after that or even longer. And so having someone who is a collaborator with you, who's excited about the work, who's cheering you on, they're the perfect collaborator for that. But again, it really depends on the author and the illustrator and how they like to work. And Matthew is really kind. He's a really intuitive writer as well. And so I feel like we really match in that way. I remember when I talked to him about the manuscript, one of the things that I was excited to do that eventually didn't become like a huge part of the book. I thought that I would map out a little journey of the kids through Chinatown and into Washington Square Park and into like a bodega. And so that would be like an actual like little area of New York City that you could walk the path that they walked. I was at the time I had already moved to LA and I flew out to New York and then I was taking pictures and doing a little bit of trying to figure out what that path would be. And I did kind of map it out a little bit, but then I realized, later that I made it so much about New York that the characters were not center stage. It kind of lost it's the heart of the book for me. And then that's when I kind of pulled back. You still see certain landmarks, but it isn't as much about that as it is about
Yes,
the kids.
that's actually another path that illustrators can take. Is like they might delve into something and then take it away, but to have that um, time working on one direction is not a waste of time because you just can pull something small from that. That journey of working on the book in the beginning, and it sort of finds its way into the final, but in a lesser way.
It's important to be able to connect with the manuscript and work on projects that really where you really feel like you can contribute to it. And it's not always the case as a perfect match, unfortunately. It's important to kind of know the kind of work that brings out the best of your work and their work. Making artwork, even if it is for commercial purposes, even if it's being used for a book, the more personal it is, I think perhaps the more that you can bring to it, right? In terms of that difference between what is yours and what's others. I think the goal maybe is that there is no line between them, but also in a day and age where, of course you do have to worry about finances. There may be times when you're working for something on something that is purely just to um, work, right? And then in that case, do I then change the content or the way that I create? I try not to. I try to enjoy myself, commercial or not.
So as we end now, I'd just love to ask what are you working on next, or is it still is it secret? Because you've got something that you'd like to share that's coming next.
Yeah. So I am going to be finalizing a book called A Lotus for You. It's written by Ming Lei, and it's a biography of Thich Nhat Hanh. And
Mm.
yeah, so that's what I'm finalizing right now.
And you're a founder of A Thousand Worlds, which celebrates art from all over the world. Um, so Black, Indigenous, and people of color. So really, showcasing and celebrating all these amazing artists. What a wonderful foundation. Really, thank you so much for joining us for the Society of Illustrators. So we look forward to collaborating more, hopefully in 2026, on many other things. And well, thank you so much for sharing so much of your inspiration. And it was a really engaging morning. So thank you, Cátia.
Thank you, everybody. It was great to draw with you. And yes, send your drawings in because I want to see them. But it's been really fun. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Bye, everyone.